Well, it's good to see
Okay.
you. I
Me
am
too.
here today with Megan Anderson, LPC, licensed professional counselor in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
That's right.
Yeah, Megan is actually a colleague of mine. We work next door to each other. We work in the same office, same
Mhm.
group practice, and good colleague of mine. So the reason I have you here is because I'm really interested in sort of your journey in becoming a therapist, and also just because I know that um, have kind of dabbled in a few different ways of doing therapy. As lots of therapists do,
Yep.
just trying to get your feet kind of in settled beneath you and figuring out what feels right to you as a clinician.
Yeah.
I had a professor when I was in grad school that said something like, figuring that out, like your identity as a therapist
Mhm.
takes like 9 years after
Oh
you
my goodness.
graduate.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's true or not because I'm 10 years post graduation or something like that, right? So
Yeah.
um and I feel the same. I don't
Okay.
know if I feel any different, but um
Well,
part of
that's reassuring for me.
yeah, I think it's normal. But I also just wanted to get to know you a little bit better, and because I know you've done a little bit of act work in the
Yep.
past, not too much, but normally the people that I have on here are very well versed in
Mhm.
act and pretty much only act, or well, not necessarily only act, but that's their main thing.
Yep.
And so it's nice to have somebody who does something a little bit different now.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, so let's kind of get into it. Well, first, why don't you just start with just kind of telling people just a little bit more about yourself and kind of where you're coming from, where you come from,
Yeah.
just in general, and then we'll kind of get into your journey as
Yeah.
a therapist.
Certainly. So let's see. Um, Originally, I'm from the Chicago suburbs, and I, for college, went up to UW Madison, and found myself there a lot longer than I thought I was going to stay there. So I stayed there for undergraduate. I stayed there for a weird year in between grad school and undergrad. And then after I completed my graduate program at UW Madison too, I stayed for a little while until right before the pandemic. I decided to join my spouse in Milwaukee, and I have been here ever since. So
Hmm.
broadly as a person, that's sort of me. I've never done a podcast before, but you know what this takes me back to? It takes me back to the one time in high school I joined the radio club. So they
Hmm.
had a radio show for our high school, and my friend and I had a show, a really brief show, obviously, but it was a show nonetheless. So I guess this is the modern age radio show for us.
Yeah, it is. That's amazing. A high school radio show. That's the
Yeah,
dream. When I was younger, that's what I wanted to do. Well, that was my sort of dream job, as being like a radio DJ or whatever.
totally.
Um, this is the equivalent, I suppose, right? I
I
don't
think
actually do
so.
it. I could do it if I wanted to, but I don't actually do it.
This is as
Um,
close as we're gonna get.
yeah, right. It's touching the clouds a little bit.
Yep.
And was your spouse all the time in Milwaukee, or did he move there for work,
Yeah.
or what happened?
Right. So my spouse Garrett and I, we met about a month and a half before we both started graduate school.
Oh,
We both went to UW Madison and graduated the same year, but we never met each other. And then, as luck would have it, we met a month and a half before grad school, and Garrett was headed to be a PA and was going to do school at Marquette, and I was staying in Madison. And so, not knowing much about him, I decided he was worth doing long distance for. And
hmm.
I got exposed, thankfully, to Milwaukee all those years he was here. So at least when I moved here, I knew the area, but definitely the pandemic put a little bit of a damper on any social development or making some friends.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so wonderful long distance relationship. My
Yep.
spouse and I started our first year together was long distance as well,
Yeah.
and it worked out. We're married now too, so
Yep.
it can work.
It can work. Anybody who's skeptical, I tell you to hold on to that a little bit.
Um, and what year did you graduate from grad school?
Yeah, so I finished my grad program. Let's see, I technically graduated in May of 2018. I didn't get my degree until August, though, just because we had a summer course we had to complete. And that added a lot of drama and a lot of angst to obtaining my training license and starting my job.
Mm,
Uh, I had essentially started my job, and 2 days into it, they told me that I was going to be fired if the Department of Safety and Professional Services
Yes.
to process my application fast.
Now, the Wisconsin Department of whatever
Yes.
DSPS
Yes.
has not been functioning well
No.
lately. Did you get caught up in that? Because people have been waiting like months and months and months, maybe even like a year for their license to be processed.
It was really, it could have been really horrible, but once they told me this, once my job told me that I had this pressure, back then I was working Sunday through Thursday. So I had Friday all day, and I truly spent the day in their office, just being kind of a thorn in their side. And, I found out by the time I got home that night, I had gotten my license, and I know that that's really rare, really exceptional, but I've met a handful of people who have, especially as of late, taken 6+ months to get their license.
I have too. So the trick is when they get to the office in the morning, they turn on the lights and you're already sitting there like at their desk with your feet up on it, waiting for them.
I encourage that.
Luckily, well, I come from Texas, and Texas was the same as Wisconsin is now in terms of license processing. It took forever, and took a long time, a little bit, I guess. But they eventually abolished the whole the whole program. You know, they fired everybody,
and they restarted over.
Yeah, it's a whole new licensing board now since I left.
Wow.
But when I moved up here and got licensed as an LPC, I kid you not, it took like a week and a half, 2 weeks maybe. Like I submitted the paperwork and then I was just licensed, like nothing, no difficulty at all. That was in 2018. So I avoided all the trouble, luckily.
And I'm hoping, from what I can tell, it sounds like they're also moving to an online system. And I don't know, my optimistic side wants to think that that will hopefully speed things up.
We'll see.
We'll see.
So anyway, the joys of being a licensed professional counselor, I guess it happens through all the different specialties as well, different licenses. But so let's get into this journey, right? So you know, fairly, I guess, recently graduated. Working here in a group practice in Milwaukee, which not everybody does straight, you know, not straight out of school, but you know, sometimes people take a little while before they find themselves doing private practice.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more about kind of your journey to becoming a therapist in the first place. So even just like the idea of wanting to be a therapist, how did this happen? Why did you want to be a therapist in the first place?
You know, it's really interesting. I was actually thinking, I've been thinking about, I think about that question often, but I was thinking about it moments ago, even in a session with a client of mine. And I remember, I think like a large majority of therapists, becoming a therapist really stemmed from my own therapy experiences of being on the other side. And I think what's fascinating and what I found myself thinking about in my session earlier was I really didn't know anything about therapy before I was just in it. And, you know, I was in high school when I did therapy for the first time. And I can recall really not wanting to do therapy. I even have memories of before that time, my parents maybe encouraging it and being adamantly against it. Like truly temper tantrum, which is not at all like me, but like it was, you make me do this, you're pulling me by my hair to get in there, I'm not going. And it was it's funny to laugh at now, but I remember thinking as soon as I started therapy, I was like, this is exactly what I needed. And I didn't have the knowledge or the wherewithal to know that that's what I needed until I was in it. So it was really transformative. And I think it was like the first pivotal moment.
That's amazing. How fortunate that your first experience of therapy was like that, right? Because you know, I don't know if the clients you work with sometimes tell you about their experiences. Not everybody's experience is like that. In fact, I get plenty of clients on a regular basis who
have something else to say.
Something else to say. They come and they say, well, I was seeing somebody else and then this happened, right? I can't tell you the amount of stories I've heard of therapists doing just, well, supposedly very strange things, right? This is clients reporting. We don't know what's actually happening, but so very, very cool. And was this in college that you were in therapy? Was this
this was like my sophomore year of high school. So I was
Okay.
pretty young.
Yeah.
And I was totally lucky that that's whose office I found myself in, and that was the experience I had. And I wouldn't say it was there that I had the thought of being a therapist, but I remember my senior year then of high school, I took an AP psychology course,
Mhm.
really interested in doing it. And that might have been one of the first times where I found myself really interested in what I was learning. And then also somewhat good at the material, meaning like,
Mhm.
oh, I was actually okay at taking some of these exams, and it just seemed like it made sense. So that was the first time I really felt like something like that came full circle for me. And I took that to mean something.
Yeah, that's great. That's when it clicked for me too, was sort of the AP psychology course, although
Yeah.
I didn't go into psychology right away. But so that's really nice. And similar feeling, right? That idea of I'm interested in this and I'm also good at it, right? I
Yeah.
feel competent with this material, which is
Yeah.
a good combination to have, right?
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, especially for something you get paid to do. So
Yeah.
amazing.
Couldn't have asked for anything better.
How is this different from kind of what you wanted to do as a child?
From what I can recall, and my parents would readily make fun of me for this, if they were hearing this right now, is I knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Mm.
For a really long time, I wanted to be a teacher. Um, if my parents are talking to somebody about me who doesn't know me very well or reminiscing on my childhood, the stories that often come up are me um, kindly inviting or forcing my younger brother to hang out with me in the basement. And we had a whiteboard down there, and I would teach lessons and give him homework. And I'm sure that created some conflict between my brother and I. But I really wanted to be a teacher. I liked that space. I really liked it.
Yeah, that's really cool, right? And
Mhm.
of course, there's some psychoeducational components to being a therapist.
Exactly.
Depends on what you're doing, how much of your work that actually is.
Totally.
Do you ever pull out a whiteboard in session or anything like that?
I haven't found that I do that in individual sessions. I did used to do it quite a bit in group therapy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like that feels pretty natural to do that in, especially some of, like you were saying, the more psychoeducational groups that maybe you run. Um, so I would say that's like the closest I've ever gotten to being like the teacher role as a therapist. And I did get to teach, I was a TA for an intro to psych
Hmm.
class. And I did that before graduate school, and I really enjoyed that. So I enjoyed higher education, probably came from my like interest in teaching for a while. And I certainly can see the correlation between being a teacher and a therapist.
Yeah, it's not remarkably
Totally
different,
far
right?
off. No.
But for sure, right? Like I think there is a way to integrate this in a way that's appropriate with our
Yeah.
clients, right? I don't want to just constantly be teaching at them,
No.
but helping them understand something is definitely a part of the work.
Right.
And a lot of clients do respond well to visual aids
Yep.
or visual tools. And in fact, you and I are going to do something later today in this interview that
Yeah.
is very visual. And I don't use a whiteboard in my sessions. I have clipboards of paper and stuff, but I need to get myself one, a whiteboard, so I can just kind of do it all the time. But
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this activity that we'll do later on. We'll just
I am too.
save that for a second later. um, so, but even so, what I'm saying here is
Yeah.
even being kind of a younger clinician,
Mhm.
like all clinicians, you're in the process of discovering what kinds of therapeutic orientations fit you individually as a person.
100%. Yeah.
And I know just from knowing you in the hallway and stuff that you've done sampled a few different ways of working with clients.
Sure have.
Tell me more about that process of like kind of what you dipped your toes in first,
Mhm.
and then kind of where you've gone since then.
Yeah. So I have like this memory of it was probably I'm guessing it was my first day of graduate school in my theories class, before we're learning anything about theories at all. And we were asked to think about our personal philosophy.
Hmm.
And we were asked to specifically, if we can, think of like a motto that maybe we've used. And I just felt like that was incredibly out of the blue. Not that it was a bad thing. It was just very much out of the blue. And I didn't know how to answer that question. I don't know what my personal philosophy is. And so I really struggled with that, but I understood later on where that was headed. And that was headed to try and help us understand theoretically, maybe what aligned with us really well. I'm not going to say that it aligned with me well, but what I found myself in initially was cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a third wave of therapy, evidence-based. We're saying these things that we really like to hear in this field. And a lot of the people in my tiny cohort initially were attracted to CBT too. So
yeah,
I found myself amongst familiar people who can help me kind of navigate grad school too. But I probably knew early on that CBT wasn't cutting it. I couldn't tell you why. I just knew it wasn't cutting it. So that was it initially. And I know that that's, well, probably one of the realms that my own therapist had taken when I was in high school. So I was exposed to it too. And I knew what it was like to be on the other side of it, but I don't know. It was just in my gut.
Sure.
So you didn't feel like it.
Yeah, you started off there, which I think a lot of people start off in the United States. That's where people generally jump off. I think a lot of our programs are oriented towards CBT.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to a specialized school.
Absolutely.
That is focuses on something else. But
right.
It's interesting. I think a lot of professors work the same way, right? Because I, in my experience too, had that same idea of like this kind of a motto or something that sort of represents your philosophy of change, how people change or work, right? And I remember my motto, which was like from a poem or something that I had read, and it was the cure for everything is salt water, sweat, tears, or the sea. And I think that maybe gave away a little bit of my predilection towards behaviorism at that time, right? This idea that you have to be moving in a certain way. You can move your body, sweat, and change where you're at, what you're doing. You can contact your experience emotionally, tears, right? Or you can kind of explore and discover something to see, right? You can change your point of view or contact something that is bigger than yourself. And so that was my motto back then when I was a baby therapist. So interesting, right? So similar journey. And obviously when I was at that same point in my professional career, CBT was the thing too for me. I mean, that's where I started as well, a little bit. I mean, my school wasn't very rigorous in terms of teaching us things, but that's kind of where I jumped off as well. So what happened after CBT for you?
So what happened after CBT was I was kind of exposed to also people in my cohort going through and questioning what orientation they had initially adapted to. And it was really nice because our program encouraged us to do that. It wasn't like you're going to be penalized or here's all this work you're going to have to do to start over. It was, oh no, this is a really good opportunity. And here's an assignment that you can do to figure out if this new one fits you. And I remember we started learning probably our second semester of grad school. We started doing a little bit more psychodynamic interpersonal process-based stuff. And I thought that was really interesting. Like I thought particularly it was interesting to like in session in the here and now ask someone like, how did you experience me telling you that? What was it like to hear me say that? How do you feel about us talking about this? What has session been like for you today? And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a really interesting moment of getting to connect with somebody. And I knew CBT, sure, it prioritizes the therapeutic relationship, but not in that way. And that's when I started learning that a lot of my program, especially the doctoral students, were exposed pretty strongly to psychodynamic approaches. And so that was something that was pretty popular in our program. And as I transitioned into my second year and took on my graduate internship that we had all year, I started thinking about, okay, this is an environment I'm in. I'm in an acute inpatient psychiatric unit. I don't have the opportunity to form long-term relationships with people. So what fits here? And that was a huge dilemma for me. I didn't know. And so then I ended up on solution focused therapy, and I stayed there for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously in the short term, right? Brief
Yeah.
solution focused therapy is sort of a thing. I mean, it's one of the only
Hmm.
people, I guess people don't realize this, but there's only like maybe 2 or 3 solution focused, brief therapies
Yeah.
that are sort of evidence-based, kind of work across some short amount of sessions.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. And I think that's where a lot of people integrate this. So you're discovering all these, and of course,
Hmm.
I think that's fairly typical
Hmm.
of a lot of therapists, right? They dabble in things and then they start integrating pieces. It's not like you don't do solution focused therapy anymore. I mean, you probably still do
Yeah.
parts of that in the work
Yeah,
that you do,
absolutely. I do.
and of course all these other things. So they're kind of rolling them together in different
Yeah.
ways. And so you're in that, well, that's a very specialized population, right? So
Mhm.
that's inpatient, very acute work.
Yeah.
You're seeing them just for a brief period of time.
Right.
They're struggling with things that perhaps are hard to change just by talking about it,
Mhm.
something like that. So that's where you're kind of at. And then what came after solution focused?
So after solution focused, and I think that it probably took some time for me to land on what the word was. Like, I think I probably truly was in just a period of like
Mhm,
total ambiguity of what fits me. Um, I think I started landing a little bit more on existential approaches.
mhm,
And the more that I kind of dabble in it and try to dip my toes into newer waters, I really like it. Um, and I feel like it makes a lot of sense. And I think if I had to look at my own life experiences, but then also look at what I've experienced in therapy, in providing therapy, I feel like that starts to do something like a little bit more justice, or it just starts to click a little bit more for me.
yeah. And so you're doing these kind of focused,
Yeah.
existential focused work. And I assume you're keeping that kind of psychodynamic piece of the relationship, the
Hmm.
interpersonal relationship, and asking for feedback and things like that in session.
Hmm.
And how do you feel like the clients are responding to that?
You know, I think I think they overall I'd say that they respond really well to that. I think I've gotten to keep a lot of really long-term clients,
Yeah.
maybe longer than I could have ever expected to get to spend time with somebody.
Hmm.
And I'd like to think it's because of that relationship that we have, and also sort of that approach and that philosophy that I'm bringing to session. Um, so I think it's working well, but I would say, initially you get people in your consultations who want the fix.
Mm.
And I think we all get that. And existentialism is not just a fix. So I try to keep people mindful of that sure, maybe we can do some strategy oriented work that you'd find with solution focused stuff. But I can tell you that after we do some like quote unquote symptom relief, I'm probably going to move in this direction of some deeper concepts.
Yeah. Tell me more about these kind of deeper concepts, right? Because
Hmm.
um, this is not something that I do.
Hmm.
I am, I do fairly brief work with clients,
Yeah.
lots of behavior oriented stuff, and trying to jump from that to kind of a more existential focus. What are some of like the questions or topics or just places that you orient people
Mm.
to get them kind of thinking in that direction?
Yeah, I think probably one of the most common places I see myself trying to initially expose people to those concepts is when people are talking about happiness
Hmm.
and not feeling happy. Because I often like to ask people, broadly speaking, how has your mood been since we've been together last? Um, and at certain points, people just really get focused on trying to feel happy, and I try to hit a pause button at that point and say, I think that there are things that are keeping us from experiencing happiness, but I would caution us in saying that happiness should not be our end goal. I think we're going to naturally, as humans, experience a wide range of emotions. And sometimes that means that we're blocked from these really important human conditions, or we're grappling to process them, like isolation or freedom and responsibility or meaning or
Mhm.
depth. And I think once we start figuring out how to actually have healthy relationships with those pieces and with ourselves, you might experience happiness from that. But I try to start reworking that. And I think that's usually like the first exposure to us kind of talking more directly about existential concepts.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Good. Perhaps the work that you and I do is not so different after all. But interesting. And so you're moving people in these directions,
Mhm.
and these questions or these topics are universal, right? So
Mhm.
everybody is struggling with these things, and it's
Yeah.
it's different than the stress at work or whatever. The stress at work is connected to something that is deeply meaningful,
Mhm.
because perhaps it is an existential threat to
Yeah.
the life that I actually want, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
The sort of bigger version of myself that could exist, a more expansive version of myself.
Mhm.
And so you're
Mhm.
working with these clients, and obviously they keep coming back, which is always, well, I don't know about always, but this is one of the signs of a good therapist, right? I had a
Mhm.
mentor supervisor once who, I was young, I was in practicum, and
Mhm.
she just asked me, "Are your clients coming back?" And yeah, I was like, "Yeah, they're coming back." And she was like, "Well, okay, that was it, right? That's kind of what matters. If they didn't want to come back, they wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
They didn't find value in it, they wouldn't return, especially if they're paying, money
Right.
for it, right?"
Right.
And so you're doing something there that is responding to some of the yearnings that people might have,
Mhm.
which is really cool to know, right?
Yeah.
So what kinds of clients do you enjoy working with? Like what is kind of like the ideal representation of somebody who walks through your door and you kind of light up and glow when you hear them talking about why they're there?
Yeah. So I like how you started phrasing that question, because initially when people ask what kind of clients do you like working with, I feel like I struggle with that for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And then I can start to think about clients that I don't always think I'm a good fit for. And then I try to positively reframe that as to what I do like. But like I'm thinking about clients that I have now, and some of the people that make me glow, I'd say are definitely people who are willingly talking about the relationship I have with them, who are willing to say, oh, like this is how I'm feeling about this, like this is how whatever you said or whatever we're exploring is sitting with me.
Mm.
So like people who are like relationally inclined, I think I really enjoy. People who aren't weirded out by that or are made uncomfortable by that. I think I like to think that we're a good fit, and they probably make me glow. um but also people who are kind of like willing to explore things like a large concept, and then start to break it down with me, because we want to get to this place of a better understanding. I think, when people find that to be either too vague or like this isn't, I don't know, specific enough, probably we start to struggle a little bit together. But clients who are willing to just really explore things and rather in depth with me, I'd say are
Hmm.
probably people I enjoy a lot.
Yeah. Of course, there's clients that come with that ability naturally, right? And then there's other
Mhm.
clients where we have to kind of build that up.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues calls it scaffolding, right? Kind of scaffolding it
That's a
up
good term.
for them. And asking for feedback is always helpful as a therapist.
Mhm.
Asking for direct feedback.
Yeah.
The therapist Dan Weil. He's a
Yep.
couples therapist, right? And he died a couple years ago. But this takes enormous courage and experience to do. But
Mhm.
he would end every session with a question, and it was the same question. And the question was, "What, if anything, was useful from our session today,
Mm.
and what was disappointing about our session today?"
Mm.
And that's how he would end every session.
Mm.
It's frightening to do that. It's frightening to. I've done it a few times. I've asked that
Yeah.
question, but to do it every single time, every single day, six times a day with your clients,
Throughout your
uh,
week, and
it's
like to do it again and again with somebody.
it takes an enormous amount of vulnerability, which of
Yeah.
course is the point, right? Is we
Yeah.
allow our clients to provide feedback in an open and honest way, knowing that we're not going to yell at them
No,
for telling the truth or whatever.
no,
So he's there building a skill, modeling a skill in himself that he would like his couples to be able to do with each other.
that's so cool.
So
I'd love to
working,
get to that place
well,
with time.
how did he get to it, right?
Yeah.
He got to it by being really, really afraid to ask it
Yeah.
once, and then he just kept doing it. And
Yeah.
so it's possible for us to get to that place, and working relationally, as you say, is great, right? That's what we need to be able to do. Is otherwise we're just kind of, I don't know. I mean, sometimes it does feel like that, where, if you go to the doctor, like the medical doctor,
Mhm.
or, any kind of medical provider, you talk to them for 15 seconds sometimes and they
Yeah.
leave. Or you try to tell them what your problems are, and they don't even seem to be listening, or they write down just like the first surface level things. They don't ask more questions about what's actually happening to you.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when clients come to see us who have no experience with therapy, they sort of expect a similar vibe.
Mhm.
And so when we are asking them what's going on, they might give us just like the skimmed surface, because they're so used
Right.
to not being engaged
Yeah.
fully.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to really say, no, no, no. I actually am truly interested in knowing a little bit more about how that's working for you,
Yeah.
how that's happening for you in your life, how
Yeah.
that's showing up for you. And I think a lot of clients can kind of get stuck there because it's just totally new for them.
Yep.
So I'm grateful that you're doing
Yeah.
that work with clients.
It's enjoyable. And I I don't know. I like to think that that's something like, I don't know, that makes it all go round, being able to
Mm,
do that.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so obviously you love being a therapist, I can tell. I mean, you're enjoying it, but also you're still kind of new.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself doing this kind of work forever, or is there something else that you'd like to be doing, maybe once you reach a certain point in your life?
I'd say if I had to place a bet, that I would stay within the realm of mental health and helping professions and counseling. I think I could also probably pretty confidently say too that I don't think I want to just hold a therapist hat for forever. Like, I
Mm,
think at some point I'd really like to add another hat into the mix, whether that is teaching or having my own, professional social media account like we've talked about together before. Just taking something else on, or even working, within a professional organization, just something else on that gives me some variety and helps me connect with our work in a different way.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people, progress in that direction. For this reason, right? Being a therapist is one of those jobs you can literally do until you just drop dead. Like, as long as you're like cognitively,
Functioning.
functioning up here,
Mhm.
you could be 99 years old sitting in a chair. I mean, it's not very physically intense. So
No, it's not,
uh,
thankfully.
in order to break that up, right, we have to
Mhm.
kind of do something else that might be a little bit more, I don't know, engage us in a different kind of way,
Yeah,
add that variety that you're talking about.
absolutely.
So hopefully, right, that you're able to dabble and integrate those things.
Mhm.
The good thing about being a therapist in private practice, at least, is you do have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
You're not actually working 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week,
No,
because it's just not
no.
possible to do that. So I think those of us who are able, privileged enough to be in the positions that we're in, we get a little bit of extra time to think about different things and
Yeah,
practice
yeah,
different things.
which is
Uh,
great. I feel
yeah,
like this is a space where, I think there's a lot of creativity that goes into being a therapist, and I think when you get to be in this domain in particular, being in private practice, you get the luxury of flexing that muscle maybe more than you would in other situations.
yeah. It's definitely an appeal to doing private
Yeah,
practice. I know not
no
everybody
kidding.
does it. Not everybody does it. Not everybody wants to do it, but that's why I do it. It's not, not for the money. It's for the flexibility
Yeah,
of time that it allows me.
yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. So maybe we could just do another question or two, and then I'd like to, if you're willing,
Transition in our special exercise.
lead you through a little activity
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
Um, Before we do that, I'm just curious, what do you think the future of psychotherapy looks like, down the road?
Mm. I'm really interested in that question, mostly because granted, I'm a young therapist. When I was in school, we were talking about teletherapy, like it was
Mm,
this big off in the distance concept. Are we going to go there? Are we not going to go there one day? And holy cow, we're in that. We're so far in that.
mhm,
Um, which I'm excited. I think we need something like that. You need to have something that shakes up our field. So I'm encouraged to see where that's going to go, and maybe some of the new things that can come from offering therapy in this method or this modality. I think I'm also sort of intrigued, and this is definitely coming from my experiences having worked on a psychiatric unit. I'm intrigued about like this medical part that's starting to change, with
mm,
the really big study that came out the other week about
mhm.
serotonin levels and depression and SSRIs.
Yeah.
I'm holding on to hope that maybe we can also just lean into some of these things that we all suffer with are part of our human condition. And I know that's an existential take.
Mm,
And it doesn't need to be this thing that's medicalized. It doesn't need to be this thing that's associated with shame. And there aren't experts in it because we're all equal experts in it, if anything, because we're all human, we all go through it. So I think it could go that route. Lastly, I'd say the route in which people are maybe beginning to take with different forms of treatment to mental health, like psychedelic medications and
yeah.
doing therapy in that route. I think that is super intriguing. I'm excited to see where that trend takes us.
Well, we'll see. We'll see where that translate takes
Yeah.
us for sure. uh, yeah, that is it's happening so fast, it
Yeah.
feels like,
Yeah.
and it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be a young therapist, I think, because there's
Mhm.
so many avenues to go down, and you have decades to figure it out. So do I. I'm not that old,
Yeah.
but so we'll see what we're actually doing in 20 years or 30
No
years,
kidding.
right?
No kidding.
Um, well, good. I like it, right? So
Mhm.
maybe now we can transition into doing just kind of a little
Sure.
exercise together.
Sounds great.
Um, so I'm going to walk you through something that I do with all my clients. It's called the ACT matrix.
Okay.
Even just me setting it up like this way is different than the way I do it with clients, because you're a therapist, so I was just
Sure.
not giving you the full experience.
That's okay.
But it's just a way of looking at your life and kind of sorting things out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen with you,
Okay.
and we'll set it up together. It's just like a diagram, and we'll use a quick example to help us set it up. So let me pull up the
Sure.
whiteboard. All right, so you should be seeing the whiteboard
A nice
here,
blank
right?
screen. Yep, you got it.
There we go. So I'm going to draw a line here down the middle with an arrow on each end,
Okay.
and on one of the ends, I'm going to put the letter T.
Yep.
The other side, I'm going to put the letter A.
Okay.
The letter T is going to stand for the word toward, like moving toward something. The
Sure.
letter A is going to stand for the word away, like moving
Okay.
away from something. So here's the example that will help us kind of think about this and set it up. I want you to see if you can imagine in your mind a rabbit,
Mhm.
like the rabbits you would see outside.
Mhm.
If you can imagine a rabbit, you can probably also imagine, right? There are certain things that a rabbit might want to move toward or get
Mhm.
closer to,
Mhm.
and certain things that a rabbit might want to move away from,
Mhm.
right? So what is something, for example, that a rabbit might want to move toward or get closer to?
Oh, I'm thinking about like people's vegetable gardens that they like to eat after. I'm picturing that.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
100%, right? Food,
Yep.
something nice to eat.
Right.
What about away? What is something a rabbit wants to move away from?
Perhaps my dog. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a
Definitely.
common occurrence.
Yeah. So super simple concept here, right? Nothing
Yeah.
really complicated about it.
Yeah.
Rabbits like to move toward things that they want more of, like food, and they
Mhm.
want to move away from things that they want less of, like animals or predators that might hurt them.
Sure.
This is actually a three-dimensional concept, even though it's so simple, because you can imagine a rabbit moving away from a dog and toward somebody's little vegetable patch at the same time.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both, depending on the circumstance.
Sure.
And so, well, turns out that you and I and everybody else in the whole world, we're all a lot like rabbits. We move toward things that we want more of. We move away from things that we want less of.
Sure.
And, the only real difference between us and a rabbit is we have like a tiny bit of a bigger brain than a rabbit does. And with that extra kind of brain space comes what I like to think of as two different worlds that we have to balance. A rabbit primarily has this outside physical world that it lives in. It cares about actual carrots and vegetables that it can eat. It cares about actual dogs that it can run away from. If you took out your phone and you showed a picture of a garden patch to a rabbit, it wouldn't care about that at all. It's not real to it. You could show a video of your dog to a rabbit. It might run away for a second, but once it realizes it's not real, it's fine again. But you and I, because we're human beings, we can see a picture or read a text message or something can happen to us and we can kind of get hung up on it all day long. Or a week later, we can still be thinking about it. Or 20 years later, right? We can still be impacted by this thing. That's because, just like rabbits, we have this outside physical world we live in. Plus, we have this inside world, which is all of our thoughts and feelings and memories and stuff like that. So I'm going to draw kind of another line straight down the center here. Let me just move that a little bit. There you go. We're going to come back to that idea of the rabbit here in just a second.
Okay.
But for now, we've got like 4 squares, 4 boxes.
Absolutely.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you one question for each of these boxes.
Okay.
And all I want you to do is, see if you can come up with just a few responses for each question. And I'm gonna write them down for you. So we're just gonna bullet point it, right? Okay. So you don't need to come up with super long answers. And maybe we'll make this sort of unique to you as a therapist. So let's start down in the bottom. We're gonna start down the bottom toward side.
Okay.
So for this question, for this box, the question is, who and what are important to you as a therapist? Who and what are important to you? So this can be people, this can be places, this can be things, this can be things that aren't physical, like qualities or concepts that are important to you, values that you might have. Just what comes to mind. Take your time.
So as a therapist, who and what are important to me?
Yep.
I think I'm going to kind of do a variety of like surface level things here and then maybe deeper pieces, but I would say I think my clients are very important to me.
Sure.
As well as the lives that they're living and the things that they're experiencing. I think that that's something that I care really deeply about and think about very often. So that's certainly who. When I think about a what, I'm probably thinking broadly about the space in which I get to come together with these people and what might be adding to that space or detracting from that space. And again, like that space, I think could be virtual, or it can be in our office, or it can be us out on a walk. That matters quite a bit to me. And for whatever reason, and I haven't analyzed this word at all, but the word that also kind of came immediately to mind was a safety. And I think that can mean a lot of things.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a great list. So of course your clients are important to you, their lives and their experience, the space that you actually do the work in, which you do in a variety of different spaces.
Yeah.
And then safety, creating that safeness for the work to happen. And as we can see, right, we're just kind of skimming the surface. Each of these items that you listed is actually super complex. We could spend all day talking about each one of these things.
Without a doubt.
And so for now, though, we're just going to kind of leave it there because we don't have that kind of time.
Sure.
And what I want us to think about is we're going to move over here to this box.
Okay.
And so for this box, the question is, what are some of the things that can show up on the inside of you that can get in the way of these things that are important to you. So this
Uh,
might be thoughts, feelings, memories, or other experiences that show up that get in the way of this stuff, or get in the way of connecting to it as much as you would like to.
yeah. I think about, I think this was even on my mind last week of just sometimes having extraordinarily busy weeks, even if it's
Mhm.
just with our personal lives. Like I don't feel as though I get to connect to my work in the same way that I would get to connect to it on a non-busy week.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I'd say that's one thing that internally probably takes away from it. Um, I think when and this is going to sound hopefully not cliche, but when I don't take care of myself, like when I haven't eaten food for a while,
Mhm.
or I haven't gotten to take care of the things that I need to take care of, I can be really distracted in my work, and that can 100% take away from things. Um, I think along the lines of distractions, when something feels really off in my life, and for me that would be something feeling off in a relationship, whether it's a friend, a family member, my husband. If
Mm.
something feels off there for whatever reason, and it could just be my anxious brain thinking that, that's another internal thing I'd say that could probably take away from a therapeutic space or my clients.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we got some busy weeks, right? When we're super busy with stuff, got a lot going on. We're just not taking care of your own needs,
Mhm.
physiological or otherwise. Or having these distractions in your personal life. I put personal distractions, which sounds kind of lame, but we actually mean here distractions in your personal life
Yeah.
that might be kind of bleeding into
Yeah.
professional focus. Well,
Right.
let's see if we can kind of add just a little bit more to these. So
Okay.
notice how you know
Mhm.
having a busy week, can perhaps influence your thoughts and feelings.
Yep.
Not taking care of yourself can influence your thoughts and feelings, and personal distractions can influence your thoughts and feelings
Mhm.
or other experiences. So, like, let's just maybe we can think of like a thought and a feeling for each one of these. Like when you have a really busy week, so much going on, what is a feeling that kind of shows up for you, or a
Mm.
thought that might kind of be running around in your mind in those moments?
Um, am I forgetting something
Hmm.
is a big one. And like I can be worried that I'm forgetting something literally, like I've forgotten an object, or am I forgetting something from a session I've had before with a client that's really important for me to remember that day.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, that's definitely a big one. It's just the feeling of I'm not sure everything's in its right place.
yeah.
um, let's see. When I'm thinking about like not taking care of myself, there's like I can't think of an articulate way to describe this, but there's like this sense that I kind of like need to go run away to take care of that thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
I need to run to go get some food, or I need to run so I can go to the bathroom, or like I need to run away and go do this workout class.
Yes.
Um it is totally like the sense of needing to run towards something. Um
Interesting.
yeah, I know that's not super articulate. There's not one word to get at that, but that's the thought slash feeling that comes up for
Sure.
me. Um with personal distractions, I'd say it's probably it's probably something, a thought that's probably pretty problem solving oriented of like,
Hmm.
what am I going to do about this?
Hmm.
Or what sort of reassurance do I need that things are okay?
Yeah. Excellent. So most of these are thoughts here. I'm putting these thoughts in quotation marks.
Sure.
So this is just to signify that like this is something that your mind will kind of give you sometimes, right? Like, am I
Yeah.
forgetting something, or I'm not sure what I should be doing here, or I need to run
Mhm.
away. Your mind can kind of give you these messages, right? So
Yeah,
it's as if your mind is speaking to you in these moments.
absolutely.
Um, so perfect, right? So we're gonna kind of swing right up here
Okay.
because these two boxes are connected.
Okay.
And so for the top box, the top left box, we're going to say, let's say that there are times when this stuff down here is just really present for you,
Hmm.
and you're really kind of struggling with some of these things. when you're really under the influence of all this stuff down there, what do you tend to do on the outside in terms of your thoughts and feelings when you're really under the influence or wrapped up in all this stuff down here?
I would say I probably, as much as I feel the need to do things, I would say my behavior, if I had to be brutally honest, is opposite of that. I avoid. I think I can feel so overwhelmed in my head or in my emotions that it feels like trying to do anything feels like a lot, and I don't do anything at all.
Yeah. So you avoid doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what do you catch yourself actually doing? Like just kind of laying around or sitting down, or what does that look like?
Yeah. I think my biggest pet peeve about my own personal self is I avoid like interaction, or I avoid responding to messages that I really need to respond to or want to be responding to. Which again is really just counterintuitive to what my head and my feelings are telling me.
Yeah. So avoiding personal interactions or social interactions.
Yeah.
As well. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of that would fit in this box?
I probably avoid responsibility. Like as much as I want to go exercise or take care of myself, like that's a thing that I end up not doing when I'm really caught up in all that other stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good, right? So you're noticing yourself kind of doing a lot of these things up there.
Yeah.
And let's swing it back down here for just a second too.
Sure.
After you've done some of these things up here, like so you've avoided doing things, you're avoiding social interactions, you're avoiding responsibility. After you've done that, what shows up down here on the inside of you in terms of thoughts or feelings?
In terms of thoughts or feelings, I think a lot of it is probably more intensified. Like, but the thoughts might become more dramatic of like, I'm forgetting everything, or here are all of the ways that I'm not taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Or here is how everything is off.
Yeah. So all that stuff that's already down there gets more intense, right?
Yeah.
And so when all that stuff down there, it's getting more intense, right? Here are all the ways. Here's, I'm forgetting everything.
Yeah.
When that stuff's really going on for you down there, what shows up on the top in terms of your actions when you're really under the influence of that really intense stuff down there? What do you tend to do on the outside?
Unfortunately, at that point, when I can get to that intense of a place, that's when I usually feel the need to hunker down and like take a physical like action. So to-do lists become my friend again. I get reconnected to those. I try to take accountability and try to apologize to the people I need to apologize to, because otherwise I'm just going to stay stuck in avoiding. Let's see. I'll probably take on a lot more. Like there'll be like this burst of energy where it's like, wow, I went from like not being able to do anything to being able to do all of these things. How do we swing that way? And why does it take so much to get to that place? But it does.
Yeah, right. You're noticing it here, right? So stuff shows up on the inside that can get in the way. You end up doing a few things up here.
Yeah.
Mostly avoidance based moves. Stuff gets more intense down here.
Yeah.
And then on that second loop around, you end up actually taking some direct action.
Yeah.
And then I assume after you're taking these direct actions, what shows up down here on the inside?
Definitely some relief.
Yeah.
Definitely like a feeling of calm, or feeling like things have a thought of like, oh, I feel, or things are more balanced.
100%, right? So just kind of pointing out or drawing out this idea, right? So we have thoughts and feelings on the inside. They influence the things that we do on the outside. And then what we do on the outside influences our thoughts and feelings on the inside.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we can kind of get caught up in a loop here where it's kind of feeding back on each other.
Yeah.
You're noticing on your personal loop here, you kind of go through that wash cycle once, and then he kind of shoots you out into a little bit more workable action.
Yeah.
Where you're actually taking care of business. But like you said, it's one of those things of, why did it take getting to this point for that to kind of happen for me? But you can kind of see how you do get there.
Yeah.
And it's the intensity that gets you there.
Yeah.
Interestingly, right? So it's possible that the intensity itself is being sort of selected for. It's like your body somehow knows, I just need to wait till things get a little bit more intense, and then I can start moving my hands and my feet.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like the concept of working under pressure, I can see how this is playing out for me.
Sure. And by your own personal account, right? This is off recording, right? You've talked to me in the past.
Yeah.
You are the kind of person who is extremely good under pressure.
Yeah.
That's sort of like, you're able to put things together under pressure.
Yeah.
And at great cost to your own personal life. So you're seeing it, right? It's got some function there for you. It's not the friendliest thing in the world, but it's there.
Yeah.
So let's round out our last box here.
Okay.
So for this box, the question is, what are some things that you could be doing that might move you toward the people and things that matter to you? Like actual actions that you can take that would help you move in that direction.
Yeah. I'm imagining, and this like would maybe take me a while to get there, but I'm imagining that having some sort of like ritual of just like, I've come to expect that I do this is usually really helpful for me. Like if I can have some sort of just consistent rhythm of like, this is what I'm doing to get the space set up for today. This is what I'm doing to get prepared and already in touch with my clients and their lives and their experiences. Like getting to do something like that would probably help me move towards those things that mattered to me.
Yeah.
Finding the ritual maybe is a little tricky, but if you can find one, or if I can find one, I usually find that I can stay in it. Let's see. What are some other things that I can do to move towards probably my clients and sort of like that space that matters to me? I know like when I feel like I can learn something, learning is usually a pretty good motivator. So like if I can, I don't know, if I need to research something for a particular client and their circumstances, that usually helps me move towards taking care of their lives and their experiences and prioritizing that. I would probably say the same thing's true of the space that would help me move towards it. So learning is usually somehow incentivizing for me.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are two things that kind of come to my mind. I'm getting stuck, I think, otherwise.
Sure. Yeah. So you got a couple of ones there. So trying to create some consistent ritual or rhythm to your days or your sessions. Something many therapists do something in between sessions that kind of preps them for the upcoming person. Maybe it's not something as concrete as, let me read the note from last week, but some kind of activity that they do. I had a colleague, a supervisor once, who she would go and wash her hands after each session, right? Just kind of metaphorically washing away the stories that she's just kind of witnessing.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So it's not uncommon, right? We see that with therapists, some kind of ritual between sessions to keep that consistent rhythm.
Yeah.
And then of course, doing something that you value, which is learning or educating yourself, doing some research into different things might prep you, kind of get you kind of in the zone for the client that you're about to see.
Yeah.
And then of course, right, not much else is coming to mind, right? So there's kind of a question mark, a couple of things of what else could I be doing?
Yeah.
Also, I just want you to kind of take a look at this, just if we can step back from it, just visually. Which box has like the most stuff going on in it?
Yeah, I feel like for whatever reason, it's that the bottom half of the away one.
Yeah.
Lower left.
Yeah. Um, does that feel familiar to you sometimes, right? You can kind of get caught
Yeah.
up in a bunch of stuff going on in your life,
Yes.
and you can kind of see how it is potentially interfering with some of the work that you're doing, which you're so passionate about.
Yeah.
But of course, we know all we have to do is wait for it to get intense enough, and then you'll
Yeah.
figure it out, right? It's not the
Right.
most pleasant experience in the world, right?
Oh,
But we know that it works because you've proven that it works.
yeah,
There's
it's true.
an old saying: if you wait till the last minute to do something,
Mhm.
it'll only take a minute to do, right? And so that's why a lot of us end up waiting
Yeah.
to the last minute. And so, I also just kind of wonder too, for you, if you're noticing a lot going on over here on the kind of left-hand side of this diagram,
Mhm.
all we have to do is kind of notice these patterns that are showing up, right? We're kind of stuck in a loop sometimes. We get caught up in it. And we can also notice what else could be present for us. On the right-hand side, there's a couple of cool ideas that you do have. I think those are actually workable ideas for you.
Mhm.
But I wonder what else could be there, right? So there's some
Yeah.
curiosity that is, I don't know, gentle for me at least. This idea that, like there's something perhaps out there that could really open up my work for me.
Yep.
Maybe change my experience for myself.
Yeah.
We don't know what that is yet, but you'll get there.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do one more thing with this, and then we'll wrap up here. I'm going to put a circle right here in the center.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. For you as a person,
Mm-hmm.
who gets to decide who and what are important to you?
Mm. I mean, I would say I get to decide that.
Mhm.
I know at times there's pressures from other people to maybe make changes to that.
We would like it to be us, right?
Mhm.
Well, we know that there's a you there. I don't know if somebody's forcing you to like your clients, but
Yeah.
I think for the most part, we want it to be us, right? Of course, there's pressures that
Mhm.
will influence what we care about. And we know that, I think, intuitively from the work that you do with your clients, the clients that come to you,
Mhm.
whose lives are governed by
Mhm.
those pressures
Mhm.
and who are not connected to what they actually want for themselves,
Yeah.
they probably aren't doing too well by the time
No.
they walk through your door.
No.
And so in an ideal world, it'd be us, me, right? That gets to decide what's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
And on this side here, who's the only person who can notice and respond to all this stuff going on inside of you, even when nobody else knows that anything is going on?
Me.
Yeah. And luckily for you as a person, who gets to decide how you use your hands and your feet and your voice and your time and your energy?
Still me.
Yeah. So in all of these boxes, ideally there's a me there in the middle. There's a you there at the center of your life. We actually have a lot more control over our lives than we tend to think that we do. Only you get to decide what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do notice that, you're being pressured in some way to care about something that you actually don't care about, or to have something in your life that you don't actually want, that might be a signal to you that something's going on.
No kidding.
And only you get to decide how you use your hands and feet, and only you get to respond to all that stuff that shows up on the inside of you. Nobody else really can do that for you, right? People can support you in this, but they can't really do it for you. And so, the idea here is just, if you could just take the opportunity to kind of notice these things kind of happening in your life, right? That this is sort of a dynamic system at play.
Yeah.
Your life is sort of bigger than any one of these boxes, that it's all of these boxes happening all the time. And what happens too sometimes is it can feel like we are stuck, right? Like there are times where sometimes it can feel like only this is going on for me.
Yeah.
And nothing else is really, front and center.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, those things are there. They are present. And it's sort of a matter of trying to reconnect to what you can do.
Yeah.
what is important to you.
Yeah.
So do you think you'd have an opportunity to sort of kind of notice these things showing up in your life, as they ebb and flow, throughout the next week here?
Oh, without a doubt.
See if you can just kind of notice the stuff kind of happening for you. And I want you to also just kind of see what that does for you. Just that idea of noticing what's going on, kind of keeping abreast or track of these sort of rhythms of your life, this natural rhythm that occurs. It's Monday as we're talking, right? So
Yeah.
by Friday, you should probably have noticed a couple of these things, I would imagine.
Would be surprised if I didn't.
Yeah, so just take a look at that, and maybe we can check in later on and kind of see what you noticed, what showed up for you.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to save this. I'll email it to you.
Wonderful. Then I
As
can
an
take my
image.
own little notes on it.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so that activity there is called the ACT matrix. It was a very specific one tailored towards your professional career. Normally, when I do them first, I do a kind of a more broad, general one, just like an overarching view of the client's life. I just want to get your thoughts. What did you think about kind of that activity and how we went through it?
Oh, I think what's really nice about that activity is, similar maybe to what I use in my session. I really enjoy still from solution focus, grabbing from the miracle question. And it's this thing where it's asking you just for you. And sometimes you have to direct the person back to it's just for you. Like, what is going on for you and what matters to you and where do you want to go from here? And so I really enjoyed that exercise absolutely incorporates that. And then there's a lot that you can parse apart for a long period of time. Like that alone, of course, it's helpful in and of itself, but like that gives fruit to so much more work. And then I think, finally what I really like is it already starts to sort of plant some seeds for some problem solving and some tangible ideas, even if they're just initial ideas. And I think for me, for clients, for any human, like having something tangible for an idea can just feel really, really reassuring and satisfying.
I agree. I do this with clients on my intake session. So that's part of my intake process. And they leave with it. So they get to take it home, piece of paper or an image, and then they look at it, they reference it throughout the week. And the next time I see them, then we follow up and kind of see, what did you notice? What were you kind of tracking there for yourself? And then that becomes sort of the backbone of the work. You can update it as needed, things like that. And so that's what I was saying earlier about this kind of idea of bringing a whiteboard into the session or something, right? It's a collaborative way. I like to do it in person because they get to write it in their own handwriting versus me writing it down for them. So this is the kind of thing that I specialize in is using this tool in a variety of ways. So I just wanted to kind of leave you with that. Just a couple of things to kind of be aware of and noticing as you're progressing through your work.
Oh, absolutely.
On a small scale and on a big scale.
Right? No kidding.
So why don't we leave it there? Because I know you've got a busy day and clients still waiting to come see you, right? Wanting to get more of this experience of life. So
now I've got some new things to ponder though too.
Yeah. So wonderful talking to you.
Thanks for doing this, Jacob.
Is there a place that people can find you? So if somebody's watching this and they want to get connected to you in some way, where would you point them?
I would probably point them most readily to my email at Hillary Counseling, which is just megan@hillarycounseling.com. I'd say, that's a really easy way to connect with me. Otherwise, for people who want to connect professionally, I think LinkedIn is still pretty great, which is under Megan Anderson. You might see my maiden name on there, Zanillo. So that's indeed me.
Wonderful. So catch her on LinkedIn. And if you're in the Milwaukee area, of course, and you're a client, let us know, or a therapist that wants to connect for some reason. You can find both me and Megan working at Hillary Counseling in Milwaukee in the 3rd Ward. All righty. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you. I'll see you at work tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. I'm looking forward to it.
All righty. Thank you. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.